Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year and welcome to Down the Stretch. Along with my colleague Mike VIETCH, the racing columnist with the Saratogian, I'm Mark CUSANO, welcoming you to our first show of the 2006 season. And over the next 60 minutes, well, a lot to discuss. We'll talk about the return of Funnyside with his trainer, BARCLAY TAGG, live via telephone from South Florida in just a few moments. We've got a second special guest for you coming up a bit later on, the man who developed such stars as Princess Rooney, Cherokee Run, and Smile, Mr. Frank Gomez. He will send out in summation in this afternoon's Aventura at Gulfstream. In between, we'll have our predictions for the upcoming year, as well as our initial lists of our top Kentucky Derby prospects. And later on, time permitting, we'll look over the finalists for the 2005 Eclipse Award. So all of that and much, much more if you stay with us on this initial show of 2006. Happy New Year, partner.
Happy New Year to you. Very well. A good day of racing. It's sort of like the official start of the season with all these names that we're going to see. And Anthony's favorite trainer, Frank Gomez, will be in later after BARCLAY TAGG. And you mentioned two horses that he developed and was okay to give away.
I think I mentioned three.
No, actually you mentioned three very outstanding ones, but it would be nice to know when we talk about in summation. I understand that in summation was somebody put a price of $3 million on his head last summer.
Hello.
And I would have figured that he would have been gone then, not after he was developed.
Because I think that's a nice number.
I think it's a great number.
That exceeds by great amounts the allowance my wife allows me. So
only by a little.
Yes, it does. All right. Let's get started. A lot to do this morning. A couple of emails to answer from you folks. First off, from Michael, and Michael sent a thank you for the reminder, the heads up on the rebroadcasting of the Alan Jerkins and Wayne Lucas specials. I hope you enjoyed them very much, Michael. And if I remember correctly, Kenny from up your way in Saratoga was also very interested in those. So we thank you. And one other email that Michael
and a nice note from RB, sent last Saturday. Congrats on an excellent show last week. The recaps were excellent, and your comments on Eclipse voting were very fair. Hooray for St. Liam holding together a year which wasn't racing's best. Also, thank you for not overlooking him when in opposition of a Fleet Alex. A Fleet Alex accomplished something few horses could in the Preakness, but one race doesn't make a year. Also, mentioning Dutrox's accomplishments despite heavy race day screening was appreciated. Perhaps he'll gain more respect as the horseman he is. He's getting a lot of respect in the community. It certainly was a year of what-ifs. Ghost Zapper, a Fleet Alex, Roses in May in Bellamy Road. Despite these what-ifs, the Breeders' Cup was something I was happy to be at. Good for you. Let's hope the state of New York racing improves so that we may host the event again at Belmont Park. Again, great show. Sincerely, RB. Thank you
RB.
Very much.
Unfortunately, Rick Dutroux did not generate enough to be a finalist for the Eclipse Award in the trainer category, which is absolutely stunning to me. I wish we had more time to discuss that. But for RB and for Michael, thank you very much. And for those of you who would like to correspond with us here at Down the Stretch over the course of 2006, here are the ways in which you can do that. Through the United States Postal Service, Down the Stretch, Mark and Mike, Capital District OTB 510 Smith, Schenectady 12305, or the most popular way, electronically at viewer mail at capitalotb.com. We begin this morning's topical discussion with a number of sad notes. Bob Humphrey, the longtime racing secretary at Calder Racecourse, died last weekend at the age of 53. Bob was credited with creating special events such as the Summit of Speed. And you know, isn't it ironic? This year, for the first time ever, Calder will get a Grade 1 event with a Princess Rooney and partner that is due in large part to the efforts of Bob Humphrey.
It is to him, and I'm glad he got to see it published as a Grade 1 event.
I met Bob Humphrey, spoke to him on the phone a number of times, met him a number of years ago at Gulfstream. Our condolences to his family and friends, and oversees a death.
Oh, my Lord. The loss of Sheikh Maktoum, the owner of, in this country, Gainsborough Stud in England, brother to Sheikh Mohammed, brother to Sheikh Hamdan. He was the vice president of the United Arab Emirates. He was part of the worldwide racing operation collectively known as Godolphin. I'm only going to say one name, and you'll get the quality of horses that he brought to the table. Fantastic Light, who was truly fantastic that year. But Sheikh Maktoum is gone. We will miss him very much. And if you talk about legacy, Mark, I was very lucky to see Gainsborough when I went to Kentucky last year, and it is just a thoroughbred testament.
And the death of a stallion. This horse raced just 3 times for trainer Woody Stevens. He was brilliantly fast, and he developed into a high-quality sire. Danzig has died at the age of 29. Partner, what did Danzig mean to the industry?
It's almost unbelievable what this horse accomplished. As a quick aside, tomorrow's Racing Form has a column by Frank Mitchell honoring Danzig, and an important part of that story is the part Woody Stevens played in convincing folks to keep Danzig as a stay. He never raced in stakes races. He was unbeaten. Well, here's a few of the statistics. He was 29. He had more than 20 champions. The ones that we probably know best are Chief's Crown and Dance Smartly, Dejure, Polish Precedent. He's the sire of, among other horses, Danehill, who has sired 300 stakes winners plus himself. Others by Danzig are Lure, Pine Bluff, Versailles Treaty, War Chant. 188 stakes winners, of which 107 were graded, led the list 3 years in succession in North America, 91 through 93. But maybe more than anything else, I'm going to give you 2 stats that are just phenomenal for this late son of Northern Dancer. For his life, 18% stakes winners. Today, 6 is almost considered acceptable. And in one of his crops, I think it was his 4th or 5th mark, he had 29% stakes winners. That's nearly 1 in 3 horses sired by him of that crop won a stakes race for its owner and trainer. This was a great, great sire, a great testament to the Northern Dancer line, and he really will be missed. And if I could say one word about Danzig, it was class in the thoroughbred.
I believe that shot of Danzig you took a look at was taken by our friend Barbara Livingston.
All right.
So Danzig dead at the age of 29. Quickly, a couple of notes on jockeys. George Chavez has suffered a broken collarbone. He did that closing day. It may have even been the last race on closing day at Calder, and Joe Bravo on opening day at Gulfstream cracked 2 vertebrae in his back, both of them out indefinitely. And finally, once again, a change in the voting procedure for racing's Hall of Fame. Partner, briefly, what's the change in the voting procedure?
The finalists on the ballot will be narrowed from 5 to 3. Voters can now vote for all 3 of them as opposed to selecting 3 of 5 in the last year. And in case of a mathematical tie, if there's a dead heat, both of those achieving the tie will go in. Otherwise, it remains at 75% for induction, and only the 75% person goes in. If there is a 78-77 situation, the 78 goes in, the 77 doesn't. But the principal thing for people when they get their ballot this year is it will wind up with 3 finalists instead of 5, and you can vote for all of them as opposed to 3 of 5 last year.
Folks, we need some stability in our voting for the Hall of Fame procedures. This seems to now change every single year. When we get to our predictions for 2006, I'll have more to say about the change in the Hall of Fame voting procedures. And we are up to our first break on this morning's edition of Down the Stretch. Thank you so much for having joined us. When Michael and I return, we will welcome in from South Florida, Mr. Barclay TAGG, who will bring back Funny Side in this afternoon's Mr. Prospector off a 6-month layoff. As we go to this break, out to rainy Southern California, for the grassy San Gabriel, and the most interesting horse in here, Badge of Silver, who throughout his career has been battling foot problems. Coming off an 8th in the Cigar Mile, they were ready to retire him. But you know what? At the last minute, they thought they'd give a crack to the proper surface.
I really do.
Let's give them a try on grass. Well, we're going to see how Badge of Silver handled the less than firm going in the San Gabriel going to the break. And Michael and I will be back with Barclay TAGG right after these messages.
And away they go. Hendricks and the white blinkers away fast from the inside gate. Estevan shows early speed. In the centre, Badge of Silver, Burning Sun settling down just behind them, and Toasted is racing along in mid-pack. Then Don Incauto, Atlando is inside of that. Just behind him comes Rhythm Mad in the gold colours, and Choctaw Nation as usual. No early speed as last. A good 14 off them. Past the stands first time round, and Badge of Silver sets a good pace with Hendricks right there second. They've cleared off by 4. Burning Sun is racing along in third. Don Incauto on the outside is fourth, and Toasted fifth, 7 lengths off these leaders. They've been followed then by Estevan. Alongside of that is Rhythm Mad, getting up a little closer now. Then we come back to Atlanto, who's racing back second last, and 8 lengths off the leaders. Choctaw Nation trailing. Onto the backstretch they go, and Badge of Silver at a decent pace out here leads them by 1 3/4 lengths, with Hendricks tracking in second. Now Burning Sun is going well in the third spot, and Burning Sun starting to move in closer. Don Incauto is fourth, followed by Toasted, and then comes Rhythm Mad in the gold colours, who's 5 off the leaders. 2 further back to Atlanto. Choctaw Nation now has 9 to make up, and Estevan is last. Into the turn in the San Gabriel, and it's still Badge of Silver the leader. Burning Sun now coming after him in the pink cap. On the outside, Don Incauto's in with a shot. Hendricks of the white blinkers there too. Toasted just behind him, and outside of that comes Rhythm Mad, then Choctaw Nation, hard ridden but not going on. They come to the top of the lane now, and it's still Badge of Silver. Badge of Silver. Hendricks is chasing in, but Badge of Silver's in full flight for the wire. Coming late on the outside is Estevan. Estevan coming fast but won't get to Badge of Silver. Badge of Silver very, very impressive. Badge of Silver and Pat Valenzuela win the San Gabriel. Atlanto was second, Toasted third, Estevan got fourth.
So what's the best way to get HD programming?
You have Time Warner digital cable, right?
Of course I do.
Then just give Time Warner a call and have them upgrade you to a high-def converter at no additional charge.
No additional charge.
No additional charge. Unlike DirecTV or Dish Network, there's no equipment to buy.
So no equipment to buy to go high def? I'm calling Time Warner Cable today.
Cool.
Cool.
Get the most out of your new HD TV. Call Time Warner Cable today. Hundreds of vehicles for sale every day. The Car Show on TWTV. All of our featured dealers has a great selection of cars, trucks, minivans, and SUVs just waiting to be driven off their lot. What we do in our TV showroom is give you all the information for you to find your own car by year, make, model, price, and more.
See what's new on the lot at Cooley Mazda Volkswagen with The Car Show on Time Warner Cable Channel 7 and TWTV.com.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. Mike Veach to my left. I'm Mark CUSANO. The San Gabriel goes in wire-to-wire fashion to Badge of Silver for Bobby Frankel and Pat Valenzuela by 2.5. First ever start on the proper surface over a turf course less than firm. That's not an easy thing for a lot of horses to handle.
It's not an easy thing, but as I was saying off camera, with a guy like him with foot trouble, I'm surprised they didn't go that way earlier, because you know his feet probably felt pretty good on a cool grass course, and boy, did he turn in a good performance.
Badge of Silver will now remain in training and quite possibly be pointed for the Dubai Duty Free on the proper surface for $5 million. All right, our first guest this morning, he won't be running this afternoon for $5 million, but this is an important comeback. The return of Funny Side, joining us live via telephone from South Florida, is his trainer, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Barclay TAGG. Barclay, Happy New Year and welcome back to Down the Stretch.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you.
Welcome
Thank you,
back,
Barclay. Barclay, we haven't seen Funny Side since the Suburban last July the 2nd. What's been happening with him over the past 6 months?
Well, we had a little problem with him in the race before the Suburban. I guess that was the Brooklyn, I guess it was, I think. Anyway, he kind of hurt his back in that race and seemed to get all better. Seemed like he was fine, and I ran him in the Suburban then, and Jerry said he couldn't. Jerry rode him in there and said he couldn't even get him into the race. So we stopped him again, and we worked on him and worked on him and worked on him, and it seemed to get better, and we breezed him a few times at Saratoga, and he seemed to breeze very well. And then one afternoon, he looked like an old man with a bad back. And finally, we just kept trying. We'd start and stop and start and stop. And finally, we just gave him 45 days of just walking and a lot of therapy, and he seemed to get better. So we put him back in training. And he's trained very well up to this race. I wanted to get a little something into him and try him for the Don Handicap next month. I was hoping for an allowance race of 7 or 8 furlongs at this nice track here at Gulfstream around one turn, and there just wasn't such a race. So I put him in this race. It wouldn't be quite as tiresome to him and try and give him a wake-up call here. So.
Barclay, obviously, the 3/4 of a mile of this afternoon's Mr. Prospector, not ideal for him. Talk about that. Talk about this 3/4 race setting him up, hopefully, for the 9 furlong Don.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm hoping for. Like I said, I'd have rather had a 7 or 8 furlong race for him, but this was available, and it's something anyway. And the timing is right. He's ready to do this. It's probably too tough a race for him, but I think if he's finishing strong at the end and passing horses, I'll be satisfied. And Edgar can let him gallop out strong, and that should set him up well for next month.
Barclay, during 2005, which obviously was a year that probably everyone would like to forget as far as that goes, but he always seemed to train well in the mornings in spite of not racing well in the afternoons. Now, he appears to be training wonderfully up to his return, but do you notice anything different with Funny Side at all?
Well, I just noticed that his back isn't hurting him anymore. That was the main thing. He'd injured the lumbar vertebrae in his back, or the muscles surrounding it or something, and we just couldn't get it better for the longest time. But it's better now, so we're looking for good things to happen eventually. I hope we'll have a good year this year with him.
Barclay, Funny Side is now 6 years of age, and unfortunately in this sport, it's rare for us to see a major horse race at 6. Barclay, are you worried at all that Funny Side at the age of 6 may have lost his zest for racing?
You always worry about something like that, but he hasn't shown me any of that in the morning. When he breezes, he's pretty much his old self now, and we feel pretty good about him. His breathing has been good. His workouts have been good. He's been good in the sound. The last time we ran him in the Breeders' Cup, he had a splint bothering him, and that's all healed and better now. I can't give him much excuse. If he doesn't want to run, why, it'll surprise me, and it won't make me happy. But he doesn't act that way, so we feel pretty good about him coming back.
Barclay, as we take a look at him in the Saratoga paddock, it's been widely reported with the back problems, as you touched upon. But Barclay, I seem to be the only person who reported that Funny Side underwent some minor throat surgery that hasn't been written, as far as I know, or spoken about. Barclay, was I wrong about that?
Well, we just cut those little cords in his neck. It's a minor type myectomy, and we just nipped those little things, and it seems to have worked. He seems to be breathing well and training well, and it was a while ago now. I don't know if it'll still work, but he seems pretty comfortable, so I think it'll be fine.
Barclay, there is still plenty of interest in your Dual Classic winner. ESPN News will televise the Mr. Prospector live this afternoon. Barclay, you've been through this for decades, bringing horses back off layoffs, but is there a sense of nervousness for you bringing Funny Side back?
Well, I'd like him to do well. There's always pressure on you in this game, and I don't mind that. I feel good about the way he's coming into it. I'm excited about running him. it's like you said, and I feel it's not the ideal race for him. So I don't feel the pressure that he has to win this race. I'm certainly going to let him run and let him win it if he wants to, but I'm not going to beat him up to do it or anything like that. You know, I'd just like to see him finishing nice and strong and passing horses and running happily, and get this race under his belt, and then we'll see where we go from there.
That's wonderful. Barclay, as always, we appreciate your time, again, having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch. All the best to you and your staff with Funny Side this afternoon. We hope he runs well for you, comes out of it well, and all the best for the remainder of the 2006 season.
Well, thank you very much.
Good luck,
Barclay
Barclay.
Tagg, ladies and gentlemen, live via telephone from South Florida. Folks, this is what you call the quintessential prep race. Back in 2004, when they were looking to get to the Don, the Gulfstream Park racing department rode a race for Funny Side at 7/8 of a mile. They could not do this year. So he stuck with the 3/4 Mr. Prospector, obviously didn't want to use the 9 furlong Hell's Hope to get to the 9 furlong Don. So folks, we know there are a lot of Funny Side fans out there. As you heard Barclay say, if they're going to give him every chance to win this afternoon, but 3/4 of a mile is not his game. They're not going to, the screws aren't turned that tight. So please be careful. It's probably better for you to sit and watch if you're a big Funny Side fan this afternoon, because this is strictly a prep for the upcoming Don Handicap.
I love comebacks that require sprint. I love it. I think it's a great move, and I think he's going to run very well. If he's what Barclay says, and I have no doubt that he is, I think he's going to perform very well today.
And you heard him say, and I don't think this has been written anywhere or discussed before, but he did have a myectomy, a minor throat surgery, and that, along with the tweaking of the back, and for those of us with back problems, we can understand that.
Yes,
but hopefully
indeed.
that will lead to a rejuvenated
I hope he's fully healthy. I really do.
All right. It is time to, as the first show of 2006, to do what we've done for the past several years, and that's to make some predictions for the upcoming year. But before we do that, we're going to take a look back 1 year ago on the very first show of the year, which I believe was actually New Year's Day. The predictions that my partner made for 2005. Now, one of the predictions, the unofficial predictions, you won't see it on the page here, but he did say it on that show, is that he was going to get me to spend a long weekend or a short vacation north of the border in Canada. I can tell you with a smile on my face that the furthest north I went last year was to the Glens Falls Country Club to play golf. So looking back, let's see how my partner did on his 2000.
Much the poorer for this, believe me, you really are.
2005 predictions. Now, Mr. Zito was the only one voted in.
Well, we got that one. The jinx remained intact. Let's see.
Go Sapper's Horse of the Year.
Well, that isn't going to happen, is it? That's too bad.
Sweet Catamine was even money to beat the boys in the Santa Anita Derby.
I took a shot even putting that up there, and so that was good. And Dance with Ravens has never raced again, and probably was a favorite that day.
I think he was the favorite in the Queen's
Never raced
Plate.
again. He's had a lot of trouble. He's off the stud.
So some pretty solid.
I got 2 of them.
The juvenile jinx remains. I mean, my God. The only thing that could have beaten you was Wilco. You had 14,000
There
other
are
horses.
lots of people who don't believe in it.
All righty. Okay, pretty good in 2005. What will 2006 hold? Here's Michael's look at the predictions for the upcoming year.
I struggled to even come up with predictions this year, so 2005 was difficult enough, but when we get them up here...
We got them for 2006, guys.
Well, just wait a minute.
The predictions coming up for the 2006 season, which actually, you know, you had an awful lot to... Okay.
Well, let me get my list out here. I did not forget. So, this year, Todd Pletcher will get his first American Classic, meaning he'll win the Derby Preakness or Belmont. I've selected Came Home as the leading freshman sire. I love that animal. I love everything about his breeding. I think he's going to be a natural. And then I've got 3 race predictions out of the last 3 predictions that I've made. Lost in the Fog to win the Met Mile.
Okay.
Sheikh Mohammed's 9.7 million yearling will win the Hopeful Stakes at Saratoga. He will probably be here this coming May training for that race.
Right.
And a filly that's actually running today. Here we go. Sabatini to win the Kentucky Oaks. There you have it. 5 very bold predictions for 2006. I'd love to get 2 of those.
Well, I think the first prediction is a very, very solid prediction. I mean, you know, Todd has reached the zenith in his occupation. Came home. I don't have any idea who is he up against.
I don't know some of the other first ones coming out, truthfully. I just can't wait to see his babies run.
Lost in the Fog, supposed to come back to Greg Gilchrist well, he's with Greg Gilchrist, supposed to run in the middle of April. So we'll see if he uses that as a prep for the event. The $9.7 million yearling will win the Hopeful,
I thought that was pretty dicey.
It is because, you know, most of those ridiculously high babies, you know, are kind of lucky to do anything on the racetrack.
He won't wind up with Baffert, who doesn't like rich yearlings. So.
And Sabatini, who starts this afternoon.
She goes today.
That's a good prediction. Will win the Kentucky Oaks. All right, there's Michael's predictions for the upcoming year. We're about to take a look at my predictions for 2005. One which you will not see on the screen, which I did predict, was that the Bobby Frankel-trained Malor Aenda would be a major force in the filly turf division. I think she was a major force in the filly turf division. She never got over the hump. She was third in the Beverly B. She was favored in the Flower Bowl. She never got over the hump. Here are the other predictions I made for 2005. Nick Zito will enter racing's Hall of Fame. As we know, that was accurate. The New York-bred commentator will make national news, and boy, did he.
On Whitney afternoon.
In the Whitney, the last career defeat for St. Liam, and it was commentator. And my prediction of turf trouble at Saratoga, what I said was races would be taken off the Saratoga turf, not because of excess rain, but because of the condition of the turf courses, and that came to fruition at the end of the meet when Naira had to take several races off. Folks, if something isn't done with those turf courses, that's going to be a recurring problem. So, partner, that's not too shabby for 2005.
Did all right.
Now, before we look at my one prediction for 2006, there were originally going to be 2.
One prediction?
Yes. Before the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame again changed its voting procedures, my big prediction for 2006 would be that in no category, human or equine, would anybody get 75%. There would be nobody to go in to Racing's Hall of Fame for 2006. I think the change that they made is so dramatic, I could not make that prediction anymore. Somebody will get in. So the one prediction I have for the year 2006 is the following: that Hall of Famer Russell Bays will become the winningest rider in history when he surpasses the great Lafitte Pincay Jr., who stands at 9,530 victories. So look for Russell Bays sometime in the latter part of 2006 to become the winningest rider in history. Okay, first show of the year. First list of Derby prospects as we stand 119 days out from the Run for the Roses. Let's take a look at my list of top Derby prospects, folks. You're just hoping they stay sound and that they continue to progress. The Breeders' Cup Juvenile hero at the top was Stevie Wonderboy, scheduled to start next Saturday in the San Rafael. Bluegrass Cat, the Remsen hero, undefeated for Todd Pletcher. I believe he lost his first start. I think that was for Elliott Walden, but since he's gone to Pletcher, undefeated. Your Tent or Mine for Neil Drysdale, second in the Hollywood Futurity, is number 3. First Samurai for Frankie Brothers, third in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, is number 4. Private Vow, the winner of the Kentucky Jockey Club, for Steve Asmussen, at 5. Brother Derek, who may contest next Saturday's San Rafael, for Dan Hendricks, is number 6. He, the winner of the Hollywood Futurity. Number 7 is a Bob Baffert, Mike Pegram allowance winner from Southern California, Wanna Runner. At number 8 is Flashy Bull, second in the Remsen. At number 9 is Fabled. Broke his maiden at Saratoga, buck shins, came back at Churchill, and won an allowance race in such an unusual manner. He was bumped and almost mugged in the race. He had trouble changing leads, and he still won. That's a Zito. At number 10, another Baffert, Bob and John, third in the Hollywood Futurity. At number 11 is AP Warrior, a wide fourth in the Hollywood Futurity. At number 12 is the Godolphin entry of Henny Hughes and Discreet Cat. They both have tremendous natural ability, but they'll both be based in Dubai. At number 13 is Barbaro, who's never even run on dirt. But here he is in his last start on the proper surface. He is moving to the lead on the outside in the Tropical Park Derby. Now, he is 3 for 3 on grass. He is a son of Dynaformer. And all else being equal, I like Dynaformers more than anything else with horses switching surfaces. If Barbaro can switch his turf form to dirt, he could be a real sleeper. At number 14 is Little Cliff. 2 for 2 at 2 turns for Zito since blinkers were added. He drew post 14 in this afternoon's Aventura. 15 is more Zito with Superfly, 5th in the Juvenile. Number 16 is Dr. Pleasure from John Ward, the Thunder Gulch Beautiful Pleasure Colt. At number 17 is Music School for our friend Neil Howard. I believe he's still only run once. At number 18 is My Golden Song, 2 for 2 for Todd Pletcher. Drew post 1 in this afternoon's Aventura. At number 19 is Tatsuji from the same connections who brought you Giacomo last year. John Sheriffs and Mr. and Mrs. Jerry Moss. A maiden winner at Santa Anita. And at number 20, anything else for Pletcher and Zito. For Pletcher, he's got Stone Cider, St. Augustus, High Cotton, Half Hours. For Zito, he's got Doc Cheney, Hemingway's Keys, Great Point, and He's an Old Salt. There's a look at my top Derby prospects headed by the Breeders' Cup Juvenile hero, Stevie Wonderboy. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm pretty much in agreement with you on say, your first 10 in particular. My thoughts, and when we get to the posting of my selections here, I think that as just speaking sort of apart from the list itself, I think we do have, with the first 5 and maybe the first 6, some really classy 2-year-olds preparing for this Triple Crown campaign. Bluegrass Cat has all the tools that you could want. Right. He's the Remsen winner. He is, in fact, with Pletcher, who earlier I said hopefully would win his first American Classic this year. Stevie Wonderboy, the juvenile winner, who's now up against the 22nd or 23rd year of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and Derby Jinx. First Samurai, a rock-solid horse. We're going to get into pedigree in a couple of weeks. I got a few questions there. Private Vow, to me, notable in that he could possibly be the champion of this group had he not suffered in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, the broken equipment. Number 5, I don't know if I can keep him here very long. Everyone talks about distance limitations. It's true, they're there on paper. He is gifted beyond gifted, and his race in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile was really something special. The Hollywood Futurity winner, Sorcerer's Stone from Pat Byrne, wonderful pedigree. Pretty much the same stuff here as Mark has got, just a couple of notes. I think AP Warrior, they've got to work on his, what shall I say, his disposition during the course of a race. I think he's got worlds of ability, but it's going to take a lot of time to get it worked out. Of the longer shots here, I'm very interested. I thought Flashy Bull was very good in the Remsen and has the potential to really build off that. And a name that you don't have, and I didn't know this until yesterday, but my number 15 here, I call him sort of my sleeper bomb, Corinthian. He runs today in the Aventura. Don't look for him to win. I'm going to play him because I like him. This guy has a gigantic pedigree. Jimmy Jerkins' 3rd start of his life. But I think it's a good group, and there are some, on the top end, some very good pedigrees. But we'll see how it goes. I'm very interested, in particular, when we get finally to comparing California to the East. If California, Mark, once again looks as strong as they did at the end of the year, that would be my observations on it. So
I had your tenor mine 3rd. You have him 9th. We both have an affinity for Neil Drysdale. The man absolutely knows what he's doing. My guess is that you don't like his pedigree.
I've got real problems with him. And, of course, for the last 2 years, You know, the Derby winners have not fit my pedigree profile. I'm the first to tell you that that's true. I just, I don't see it. I think the ability's there, but I think in the nitty-gritty on going 10 furlongs, if we get to him, you'll see what my concerns are. And there's somewhat my concerns with Stevie as well, despite the fact people are saying he's got a loaded 10 furlong pedigree. The guy on top does, and the guy on the bottom does, that's for sure.
All right,
you know.
Our first list of Kentucky Derby prospects, to go back to last year for just a second. Remember, it was Giacomo at 50-1 who shocked the racing world. On our initial list last year, my partner had Giacomo at number 14. I had Giacomo at number 9. So we did have Giacomo there. Is the Derby winner on one of our lists? We shall see in 119 days. And we are up to our final break on this morning's initial show of 2006. Thank you so much for having joined us. When Michael and I return, we will welcome in Mr. Frank Gomez, who later this afternoon will saddle in summation for the Aventura at Gulfstream Park. As we go to this break, the final Grade 1 of 2005, the La Brea over a sloppy surface at Santa Anita. Pretty interesting situation with a Bob Baffert trained
yeah, you know, Bob Baffert, I got a kick out of his statement a couple weeks ago that he doesn't like buying rich horses, and I can certainly understand why. And he's not much on pedigree per se, but let me tell you about pedigree. The winner of this race that you're going to see is By Real Quiet, trained by Baffert, owned by Pegram. The mother of the winner of this race is Hooked on the Feeling, owned by Pegram, trained by Bob Baffert. So they're together again for the final Grade 1 of the year.
So we'll take a look at the La Brea going to the break, and Michael and I will be back with Frank Gomez right after these messages.
Oh, where they go, broken up, good line. Pussycat Doll broke well, but is not going to go for the lead. On the far side, we have Leave Me Alone showing speed. Along the inside, here comes My Miss Stormcat in the gold colors. Resident Alien right there as well, and Simply Because now going up between horses. Just in behind them comes Mystic Chant, and Great Intentions is racing in the 5th position. Trickle of Gold is giving them 6-length start, 5 back to Pussycat Doll. Then comes Sharp Lisa, Verbatim's behind that, and Thrilling Victory is last. Past a half mile to go. My Miss Stormcat flying on the lead to Resident Alien. A gap of 4 back. Trickle of Gold coming through at the rail. Leave Me Alone in the red colours on the outside is going up to race a joint 3rd with Great Intentions right there as well. Then back to Simply Because, who's 10 lengths off these leaders. Pussycat Doll is starting to roll, and Pussycat Doll is now coming fast in the red colours. Pussycat Doll making up ground quickly, then Sharp Lisa. They turn for home. My Miss Stormcat going to have to keep off Pussycat Doll. Pussycat Doll is catching them stride for stride and has just gone right on by now. They come past the 8th pole, and it's Pussycat Doll in an amazing performance today. She let loose at the 3/8 pole and just bounded the whole way home. And it's going to be Pussycat Doll and Garrett Gomez to take the La Brea. 2nd was Leave Me Alone. Then came Thrilling Victory, and Sharp Lisa was 4th.
Hello, this is Jim Bond. You're watching Down the Stretch on the Off-Track Betting Network.
It's fast, it's easy, it's fun. BeepBeep.com, the area's best site to shop for cars online. Find the vehicle you want when you want it. Shop by payment, price, vehicle description, dealership, and more. Get a quote sent directly to your email. Fast, easy, fun. BeepBeep.com. Log on today, drive home tomorrow.
Drive home with your car from Queensbury Auto Mall with BeepBeep.com. For the wedding of your dreams, make it the Georgian Resort Hotel and Conference Center on the shores of beautiful Lake George, your year-round destination. Breathtaking scenery, unparalleled service, award-winning innovative cuisine, contemporary, elegant, affordable. This is the Georgian your guests will never forget. Call 668-5401 today and let us help you create a truly special event. The Georgian Resort Hotel and Conference Center on beautiful Lake George.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. Mike Veach to my left. I'm Mark CUSANO. Do you remember the song "It Never Rains in Southern California"? Doesn't play out this year, but the La Brea over Sloppy track goes to Pussycat Doll for Bob Baffert and Garrett Gomez. Love the slop in that very fast early pace to rally for a 5 3/4 length victory over Leave Me Alone, last year's Test Stakes heroine. All right, our final guest this morning is a gentleman who has been around for a long, long time. I mentioned at the top of the show, developed such outstanding racehorses as Cherokee Run and Princess Rooney and Smile. And here's Michael to introduce him.
And Mr. Frank Gomez has developed another one in the very gifted In Summation, who will be one of the choices in today's Aventura Stakes as the Florida Derby Series kicks off. On behalf of our audience, Frank, if you're with us this morning, thanks for joining us. Are you there?
Well, it's a pleasure.
Good morning, Frank.
We're very glad to have you, Frank. A few questions, if you will, about In Summation. I'm going to start with where he stood near the end of the summer last year. He was unbeaten after the Affirmed, and I was very interested in your very strong statement that you were not going to go to the Breeders' Cup. Would you talk about that, please?
Yes. Actually, we had a race here, which was 400,000. We thought it might be an easier spot than going to New York. 2 weeks wasn't enough time, actually, between the race here and the Breeders' Cup. So we decided to stay here.
Frank, at that time, there was a published report after the Affirmed now that you folks had been offered $3 million for this guy. Was that true?
Well, it's supposed to be.
Well, Frank, regarding In Summation, much has been said and much has been written about distance limitations with this fellow, and some people say that might have been the case in reality. We're going to take a look at that. So I'd like you to comment on the distance limitation as we're viewing the In Reality, which was his final start last year.
I don't believe distance was a question there, actually. There were horses that took him by the head every step of the way and never got a breather.
Okay.
And he ran pretty good, and he was coming back at that horse at the finish. So I think that minus 16th didn't hurt his chances any.
When you got done with that particular race, and we're watching them on the turn here, and he's on the inside, did you know at that time that was going to be the end of his 2-year-old campaign?
Yes, we did.
Frank, coming back in the Aventura, it appears that there is a fair amount of speed in this race, and you are, I don't know if it's fair to say you're parked out in post position 9, but you are out there. Is there any concern that he'll be sort of very fresh today as you make your 3-year-old debut?
Well, he may be, but I think he's a horse that you can rate.
Okay.
If there's a lot of early speed, which there is. And you know, Jerry, he can rate a horse pretty good when he needs to.
Frank, will there be any specific instructions to Jerry as you kick off the campaign?
No. He'll just have to ride his own race.
Frank, if he does well today, I'd like to ask you, will you take one of the next logical steps towards the Florida Derby?
Well, the Hutchison would be his next race.
Oh, okay. All right, that's very good. Mark, do you have a question?
Frank, I mentioned earlier in the program that you developed such outstanding horses as Smile and Princess Rooney and Cherokee Run, among others. So, you know, you've got a tremendous professional feel of young racehorses. Frank, be brutally realistic. How good is In Summation?
We'll find out today, won't we?
we will to a degree, Frank, but is he the type of horse that you can see continuing to improve as a 3-year-old as the distances get longer, or will his game likely be the middle distances?
I think his game may be middle distance. course, speed is always dangerous, as you know, but he's not really bred to be a classic horse. He's bred to be a sprinter. But so far, he's done just about everything we've asked him to do. So we'll be looking forward to today's race and see what happens.
Well, Frank, we're looking forward to seeing him run later this afternoon in the Aventura as well. We want to thank you very much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch. We appreciate it very, very much. All the best with In Summation this afternoon and wherever else he takes you. Thank you, Frank.
Good luck, Frank.
Thank you. You're very welcome.
Okay.
Frank Gomez, ladies and gentlemen, the trainer of In Summation. And, you know, we don't have the late scratches yet, but you get 14 horses going in basically, you know, 1-turn mile is an extended sprint. I like the fact he has post 9. I think the key for In Summation, you know, Michael brought it up to Frank, he's been away since the middle of October. Sometimes it's difficult when you have a horse with natural speed when he's so fresh coming back. The first, you know, 1/8 of a mile, the first 1/4 mile, if Jerry can get him to settle and relax, I think he fits in this field.
Super dangerous if that happens.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
He fits in this field awfully well. But this is a highly contentious race. You've got My Golden Song from the inside. St. Damon, a lot of people like. It's Alan Jerkins. You know, he won the Huntington. I just can't take Andrew Lakeman in a 14-horse field. That's just me. Cat coming at you. Big race in the Iroquois 2-back. Kind of dull in the Kentucky Jockey Club. Kind of a wide trip. Was in between horses down the backside. Steadied ever so briefly. Should run better today. Corinthian.
Well, you know, he's a big maiden win at the distance, and a lot of these are, you know, again, other than In Summation, a lot of them are making that step up to 8 furlongs today.
A monster price in this afternoon's Aventura.
Go ahead.
A huge price. Who has an outside chance is number 10. It's all about the chase. They added blinkers last time, and he broke his maiden at Churchill going 2 turns. But it's the way he did it. He made a mid-race wide move, an extended rally all the way down the backstretch. You expected him to flatten out, and he didn't. This is a huge step up, but he's got a chance to run okay this afternoon. And, of course, I've got Little Cliff on my Derby list. Little Cliff, since stretching out to 2 turns and adding blinkers, is 2 for 2 for Nick Zito, but he draws post 14 going a mile this afternoon. That's a little bit difficult to overcome, but a highly competitive race in this afternoon's Aventura. It's a competitive race in the Mr. Prospector, and it's a competitive race in the Hal's Hope. So 3 stakes on this afternoon's card at Gulfstream Park, all very, very competitive. Speaking of Gulfstream, briefly, Wednesday was opening day. This is the best shot we could find. I'm sorry, folks, it's not a great shot of the new facility at Gulfstream. Good friend of mine was there on opening day, and we chatted via telephone several times during the course of the afternoon. He told me that it's his feeling that when the facility is finished, it's going to be a magnificent looking plant. But for 170 to 200 million, it should be. The problem is they built it small, and I mean small. Let me give you some numbers here. There are approximately 900 reserve seats. These are outside undercover, just like at Saratoga. A total of 900. Of the 900, only about 480 are available for patrons. Now, 480 reserve seats equates to 2 sections at Saratoga Racecourse. Think about that. 2 sections at Saratoga. That's what the general public can buy. The cost of those seats, now, there is no charge for parking, no charge to get into the grandstand. Those seats on most days are $10, which I think is very reasonable. But it changes on some special days, such as this afternoon and the special Saturday in February. They go to $20. For Fountain of Youth Day, those reserve seats will cost you $50. And on Florida Derby Day, those reserve seats will cost you $75. Now, if I'm not mistaken, partner, on Travers Day, the Naira has raised the prices of reserve seats a little bit over the years. They're up to what, $20, $25?
I think
$25,
yeah,
something like that?
grandstand reserve, I think, is 20 on Travers Day. Yeah.
$75. That should give you a little bit of an idea, not for profit versus for profit. The upscale restaurant at Gulfstream Park on Florida Derby Day for a seat will cost you $250. So the facility is supposed to be absolutely wonderful. It will not be finished. It may not be finished for the rest of this meet. We're going to try to get Gulfstream President Scott Saban on at some point. But the big question here is, why spend nearly $200 million and create a facility that small for racing?
I can't answer it. I can ask a devil's advocate question. Does Magna and that management see their live attendance clientele as high end? Is that what one would infer with the limited availability of customer convenience? I mean, is that? I'm not. It's only devil. It's not. I'm not saying that with a spear. I'm just saying, listening to you say that, that's what I would infer is if I want to go to the races like I normally go to the races, I got to shell out a lot of money. That's basically what I'm hearing.
That is going to be a facility which includes shopping, slot machines, a movie theater, and Scott Saban has come out and said that basically they feel that a lot of their on-track patrons will do different things in between races during the course of the day. I just don't think that they feel as though the on-track patron there to watch live racing necessarily wants to watch it in what maybe Magna considers the old-fashioned way, sitting outside the reserve seats and watching it. But we will try to get Scott Saban on the show because it's a very, very, they're talking about it as the facility of the future, and that's pretty interesting to build a wonderful facility so small. Last couple of days, the finalists for the 2005 Eclipse Awards were announced in every category with the exception of Horse of the Year. I'm going to read you the finalists and we'll chat about them in some categories. These are in alphabetical order. And please, folks, don't make the mistake that a lot of people do. Just because a horse or a human made it as a finalist doesn't necessarily mean that they got any first place votes, because only the first place votes count as far as champion, but we have to list our votes 1, 2, 3 just to assemble the 3 finalists. 2-year-old male, First Samurai, Henny Hughes, and Stevie Wonderboy, and there's absolutely no surprises there. 2-year-old filly, Ado, Folklore, and Wild Fit. 3-year-old male, A Fleet Alex, the overwhelming favorite, Flower Alley, and Giacomo. The 3-year-old filly, Round Pond, Smuggler, and Summerly. Ladies and gentlemen, listen to this. No Sweet Catamine. And if somebody had told me after the March 13th Santa Anita Oaks where Sweet Catamine galloped, she wouldn't be a finalist, I wouldn't believe it. No Sis City. After she won the April 19th Ashland by 10.5, I wouldn't have believed she wouldn't have been a finalist. No Spun Sugar, who was never worse than 3rd, and Note Sweet Symphony, who won the Alabama by 6.25. That was a fascinating division all year long. It changed month by month.
Yeah.
The older male, Borrego, Rock Hard 10, and St. Liam. The latter, you know, the overwhelming favorite. The older female, Ashado, Pleasant Home, and Stellar Jane. No Happy Ticket. That was the only surprise to me. Sprinter, Lost in the Fog, Saratoga County, the ill-fated Saratoga County, and Silver Train. No real surprise. The male turf horse, Artie Schiller, Loa de Sanamo, Scirocco. We think it'll come down between the 2 middle distance runners, Artie Schiller and Loa de Sanamo. Female turf horse, Cesario, the winner of the American Oaks, Intercontinental, and Megahertz. Steeplechaser, Hirapur, McDynamo, and Surlatet. Now the human categories. Owner, Michael Gill, Live Oak Plantation, Melnick Racing. No William Warren Jr., the owner of the horse, the likely horse of the year in St. Liam, and no Bob Bone, who swept all the meets in Southern California last year. Breeder, Adena Springs. Edward Evans, Live Oak, no major surprises.
Sure, yeah.
The trainer, Steve Asmussen, Bobby Frankel, and Todd Pletcher. No Rick Dutrow. I got to ask you, partner, this goes back to perception. With the year that Rick Dutrow had, culminating with the 2 victories on Breeders' Cup Day, the trainer of the champion older male and the likely horse of the year, Rick Dutrow won more races in New York than anybody else. How is he not a finalist?
Well, it's a fair question. I mean, if the perception thing is a part of it, there's something unfair, but the 3 names you named, without me having my statistics sheet, probably earned more money, probably had more grade 1s, and probably the voters looked at it that way. This is sort of akin to one of the years when there was an uproar over Michael Gill not being a finalist amongst the owners or something like that a few years ago, and how awful the process was, and it has its flaws too, but I think people are just looking at it that way. I mean, if you're a Dutrow fan, you got a right to be upset. The 3 names that are there, I mean, I'll toss it back to you. If Asmussen, Frankel, or Pletcher weren't a finalist, would you be sitting here saying, I can't believe that? I don't know.
I don't know this as a fact. I can't imagine Steve Asmussen won more grade 1s than Rick Dutrow.
I'm not saying grade 1s, but he won more total purses.
Oh, total purses,
so
sure.
I'm not saying
sure.
grade 1s.
The jockey was all New York. Jerry Bailey, Edgar Prado, John Velasquez. In The Apprentice, Channing Hill, Justin Stein, Emma Jane Wilson. The Eclipse Awards will be announced in Southern California on Monday evening, January 23rd, along with Horse of the Year. On our show of January 21st, we will unveil to you the ballots of the 7 local Eclipse voters. So that's coming up in a couple of weeks. Final reminder for those of you who would like to correspond with us here at Down the Stretch, here are the ways in which you can do that. Through the United States Postal Service, Down the Stretch, Mark and Mike, Capital District, OTB 510 Smith, Schenectady 12305, or electronically at viewermail@capitalotb.com. Time to thank all the folks who helped get this week's show on the air. Pete Persico directed, Dan Hayes and Pat Peretta and Kurt Fleck, our associate producer Julie Hoxie, and special thanks to this morning's guests, Barclay Tagg, who will be bringing back Funny Side in this afternoon's Mr. Prospector, and Frank Gomez, really a legend within the sport.
That's great.
Frank Gomez will settle in summation in this afternoon's Aventura, both on a very, very competitive card at Gulfstream Park. Partner, have a good weekend.
Well, you too. Enjoy the races from the new Gulfstream Park. At least we've got some names back today, so it's going to be fun.
Yes, we do. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for having joined us for our first show of the 2006 season. We hope we will see much more of you throughout this year. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy all the terrific racing action from coast to coast. Have a wonderful upcoming week. And Michael and I will see you next week.